Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Jessica Flynn here, owner and maker of Flynn Sisters Boutique, and today we're going to be doing kind of a serious and sensitive topic. September is Suicide Prevention Month, and I personally have my own struggles with mental health that I've shared with you all, and I have gotten so many messages about your own struggles with this topic. And one of my viewers asked me specifically to do a design like this. And so this is for her. If you or someone you know is struggling with suicide, please dial 988 for help. Here are some facts about suicide, and please believe these numbers have grown since 2020. But that's enough chit chat. Let's go ahead and get started with the tutorial. All right, you guys, so today I'm working with a 20-ounce Chatanga from Craft Haven. This is kind of like a modern curve, I guess. And I'm going to tape off the bottom of my cup today. If you don't want to tape off your bottom, you don't have to. You can skip this step. But I'm just going to run a line of electrical tape around the bottom rim here and then run it through my edge trimmer to get that edge nice and crispy. Once I've got it taped off, I'm going to prep my cup like I normally would by sanding the sides of my tumbler and then cleaning it up with some rubbing alcohol and paper towel. Now we're ready to get started. For my base paint today, I'm using Tropez and Grape, both spray paint colors from Rustoleum. And I'm going to start with the Tropez. It's like a really pretty teal color. And we're going to move in a swirl type design, just one swirl of purple and one swirl of teal. You may have to go back over some spots. We are using some very highly pigmented metallic glitters, so the base paint on this one is not super important. Mainly this is going to act as a roadmap for me on where I'm going to be putting my glitter. As soon as my spray paint is dry to the touch, which should only take about 20-30 minutes depending on the temperature of your workspace, I'm going to be using epoxy for my glitter adhesive today. I've mixed 5 milliliters of my Flynn Sisters Fast Cure epoxy resin, and I'm just doing a super smooth, super thin layer. I won't even use all of that 5 milliliters. Once I've got my epoxy spread on there and there's no lines, everything looks nice and smooth, I'm going to start sprinkling my glitters on starting with the chunkiest cuts first, which in this case will be Lady Lavender. It's a beautiful holographic purple. And I'm just sprinkling that kind of on the outer edges of my purple sections, going very lightly. Anytime I'm doing like an ombre or a blended swirl, we start with just very thin coverage up first, lay down our rough draft, and then we will build coverage from there. Next, I'm going in with Berry Bomb, which is a finer cut purple holographic. I'm going to have all these glitter colors listed and linked down below in the description box. I don't want a lot of this color, just very kind of sprinkled here and there to add some dimension to the darker purple that we're going to be putting on, which is Belieber, also from Peachy Olive Glitters. And still, you guys can see I'm doing very light coverage. I'm also kind of going into the teal section just a smidgen, okay? For the chunky cut in my teal section, I'm using Head Over Teals, also Peachy Olive Glitters, and I'm just sprinkling that randomly here and there around the cup. By adding in different cut sizes and shades to the two colors that I'm working with today, it's going to make for a much richer look. Of course, you don't have to do all this. If you just want to do 2 different glitters, one purple, one teal, you could do that. And of course, you could use whatever color you want. I'm just showing you guys the technique. Next, I'm going in with Weekend at Bernie's, also from Peachy Olive Glitters. I'm sprinkling a little more liberally now that I got the rough draft mostly laid down. So from here, it's just going to be about building coverage and blending. Once I'm happy with the look here, I'm going to aggressively tap off the excess glitter, and I'm going to let this sit on my rack to dry for about an hour before moving on to the next step. Your dry times will vary based on the brand and type of epoxy that you're using. I did not seal my glitter prior to my first coat of epoxy. I just made sure I got off all that excess glitter, and because I used epoxy method, the hold was perfect. And this is a more blended look, so it's okay if some of that glitter shifts around a little bit. For my first coat of epoxy over glitter, I am just using my Artist Cure resin because I ran out of hours in the day and this has to roll overnight anyway. So I am just applying this coat like I normally would. This is 30 milliliters of epoxy. You'll notice that I did re-tape off my bottom before applying the epoxy just with some painter's tape really quick. As soon as I'm done applying my epoxy, I am going to remove that tape and hit it with my torch like I normally would to pop any bubbles. This is going to dry for a solid 8 hours before we move on to the next step. I did apply a second coat right over the top of this once it was dry, just using my Fast Cure epoxy. So that second coat dried for about 4 hours before I was ready to start with sanding. I'm going to do my normal sanding routine, only this time I'm going to sand down that top rim more than I normally would, because when we're doing a peekaboo, we need to give ourselves more wiggle room over that glitter layer because we'll inevitably have to sand again after we paint. And it's going to make for a cleaner look if we sand down this glitter layer even further, because you don't want to accidentally sand down too much through your paint layer and expose some of that glitter where you're not supposed to. I've said this a lot in my peekaboo videos, and if you wanted to make it easier on yourself, you could have just taped off the top rim too to bring that glitter layer down further. So that's not an issue for you. You're going to see how I fix my boo-boo and doing that later in the video. All right, everything's sanded down smooth. There's no bumps or anything on our cup. I cleaned it off with some rubbing alcohol and paper towel. And now we're going to apply our stenciling decals. Please be smart and use stenciling vinyl for this step instead of permanent vinyl. I'm just lazy and keep forgetting to buy stenciling vinyl. You'll get much better results with it, and it's a lot easier to work with. A lot of people tell me when they do peekaboos and they pull their vinyl, there's like a sticky residue that they can't get off. In my experience, I found that that is happening because your epoxy is not fully cured and it's having a chemical reaction with the adhesive in the vinyl. So it really helps to make sure that that epoxy is fully cured, like it's been dry for quite a while, at least maybe 6 hours or so if you're using a fast set. If you're using a regular cure epoxy, at least 12 hours. And sand down the sides, make sure everything's nice and smooth and buffed out, and that'll really help with that issue. Also, using the stenciling vinyl will help prevent that. This image I found on Etsy. I sized it to about 5.5 inches wide with the proportions locked, so that fit perfectly on this 20-ounce modern curve. I did cut the transfer tape and the backing paper really close to the vinyl cutout because my cup is curved, so I had to finagle that vinyl a little bit. Obviously, if we were working on a skinny straight, it would be a lot easier, but I just love the look of the wings with the curve of this style cup. Once I was done applying my stenciling vinyl, I spray painted my cup using flat white spray paint. Make sure that you do 2 thin, even coats, 3 if you have to, letting each coat dry in between. That way you're not getting too heavy of a coat and some drippage. I made this mistake because I was in a hurry and I ended up having to remove all my paint with acetone, which then messed up my vinyl. Just take your time and be patient. Once this is fully dry to the touch, which for me took about a half hour, we're going to apply our adhesive for our pearly, sparkly, glittery stuff that we're going to put on this. So almost like a double glitter peekaboo. I'm using Wicked Stick It from Wicked Shimmer Supply. I will link it down below. It's one of my favorite adhesives. And I'm applying it with a fluffy little blush brush, I guess, because we don't want any kind of lines, no pooling, and we don't want this to be too thick. Just nice, thin, and even. You can use your heat gun to help dry it quicker, but the stuff dries really fast and it dries clear and glossy. Once this is dry and still tacky, okay, because it's like tack it almost, we're going to apply the sparkly pearly stuff. This is Diamond Magic from Maestra Creations. And I started out applying this with a magic eraser and just poofing it on there. But that was taking forever and I got really impatient. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to dump it all on there. I warn you, it's going to be super messy. Definitely do this outside. Make sure you have something other than a paper, like a piece of paper to collect all that excess. I wasn't thinking and I just poured it all into the paper towel. I was able to save a good amount, but anyway, do as I say, not as I do. I rubbed it in with my hands. Also messy. You're going to definitely have to vacuum yourself, vacuum your life, vacuum. It'll forever be in your house once you're done with this. But the results were absolutely beautiful. I've never been able to get a consistent sparkly pearl over my peekaboos like this until I did this, okay? I just dumped it all on there. Is it messy? Yes, but I promise you it's going to be worth it. Okay. So look at how beautiful this is. Okay, and then I just went in and removed my stenciling decals. You'll see that I am definitely struggling with getting these decals off. That's because I did not do any of the things that I told you guys to do earlier in the video. I didn't wait till my epoxy was fully cured, so it reacted with the adhesive in my vinyl, and I messed up with my paint, my spray paint, because I was being impatient, and I had to clean off all the paint with acetone, which also thinned out my vinyl for my stenciling. Okay, I messed this cup up again and again and again. I made every mistake that I know better than to do because I was being impatient. Okay, so don't be like me. Take your time, do it right. Once I've got all my stenciling decals removed, we can just go ahead and epoxy right over this. That adhesive is dry. Even though it stays tacky, it's dry. We don't have to do anything more. We don't have to seal this if we don't want to. If you wanted to seal that sparkly pearly stuff that we put on there so it stays absolutely put, you can do that, but I did not. And this time when I'm epoxying, you'll see that I did not tape off my bottom. That's because I bring the epoxy down just right below that line where our design ends. If you don't tape off your bottom, you can just ignore this part of the instruction. But after I epoxy, I just wipe off any of the excess from the bottom, and that's it. I don't tape off again after this point in the process. I'm going to let that layer of epoxy dry for a few hours. I think I used Fast Set on this time. And once this was dry, we are going to work on finishing the top rim. Now, I did not film what I did here. You'll notice that the top and bottom rim are super clean and crispy. That's because I had to do some rework on this cup. I sanded down too far on the top rim and exposed the glitter through the paint. I tried to touch up the paint, but it just didn't look right. So here's how I fixed it. I ran it through my edge trimmer, the second rung up from the bottom on the bottom rim, and then I did one rung up for the top rim. If you're going to do this, you're going to run it through that edge trimmer again and again and again until you feel that blade hit against the stainless steel. It does take some elbow grease, and then you can just remove that epoxy and paint and glitter, clean it up with some acetone and a paper towel, and you'll get a nice crispy edge. Now, obviously you can avoid all that by just taping off ahead of time, but I didn't tape off ahead of time because I fully intended on bringing that paint and everything all the way up to the very top rim. But because I messed up and made a mistake, I had to fix it. So I wanted to show you guys how I fix these peekaboos when I mess up, okay? You'd think I'd learned my lesson by now and just tape off the top too, but I don't. And I always have to do rework on it by running my cup through that edge trimmer and pulling off that top rim of epoxy and paint and cleaning it up. Total pain in the butt. But if you've ever been there before, you know what I'm talking about, and hopefully that would help you too if you need to do it. It's not the easiest thing to do. Again, you really have to run it through that edge trimmer a few times to really slice through all those layers of epoxy and glitter. But I really like how it looks. Then once I've got that all cleaned up, I applied my final coats of epoxy, and I just brought the coats of epoxy just right up and over where I made those cuts. And that's what's going to create our final seal for our cup. So everything's nice and clean. Everything's fully sealed, okay? Despite the fact that I made a million mistakes during this tutorial. I don't know why I struggled. I guess I haven't made a very technically difficult cup on the channel in a long time. So I think I was a little bit rusty, and I was just trying to rush through it instead of being patient and doing things the right way and thinking it through. So learn from my mistakes. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy this design. I hope you're inspired. I had originally done a design like this as a memorial style cup for a friend of mine whose mom passed away, and you guys went crazy over it. I only made that in my private group, so a lot of you had asked for a tutorial on that. So I guess this is that tutorial. It's just different colors. The original memorial cup had the like gold and silver glitter instead of purple and teal. But let me know if you're going to try this. Give me a big thumbs up if you like my video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I upload new videos every week. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. And a big thank you to all of our Flynn Sisters exclusive members. Thank you for your pledge. Your support means the world to our channel. If you love this video, you could check out our last video here. Also be sure to find us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and of course subscribe for all our new videos that come out every Wednesday and Saturday. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.